so the process after we've scanned our image, what we want to do is we want to set what's called the white and the black point, which is really going to give us high contrast. Because even though this is relatively clean, there's like not a lot of stuff outside, when we do an image trace, it's going to pick up all these fine little details, right? When I really zoom in, you guys see all the texture that's there? So it's going to pick that up, and it's going to kind of make it a little harder to isolate your artwork. So if I go to Image, Adjustments, and Levels, I'm going to choose this white eyedropper to set the white point. Look at all that. It got rid of like all that stuff in there, right? I can do the same thing with my black point. So I chose the black eyedropper, and then I clicked on where I want the darkest to be. I mean, I could probably get rid of her shading if I did that, but I don't think you really want to do that too much. Yeah, so you can also use like these sliders on here, so we can kind of adjust some of this stuff this way. Really want to have just black and white in there, probably something like that. All right, I don't know if your shading is going to cause any issues here, but let's see what happens. All right, so that would be our kind of our cleaned up scan. So I'm going to save this as a JPEG. All right, so I'll just kind of put this into my pictures. You can practice that with yours, Aurora. And then for today, that would go into Classroom. I gave you guys a couple links here, right? So I want to see that you have used the scanner. So our logo scans will go in here. All right, so you can just click Add Photo, and then select from Computer, and then I would go into Pictures, and I would choose, isn't that where I saved it? Oh. Nope. All right, let me double check. I guess I didn't save it where I thought I did. Why is that grayed out? Oh, all kinds of fun things are happening. There's got to be a pop-up that showed up somewhere. Probably a save option. Let's pause this for a sec. So in the saving process, you can just press OK to this. And now if I come back to that Google photo album, and if I select from the computer and go to my pictures folder, because I was kind of being lazy there. All right, now that scanned image is being uploaded, and there it is there. All right, now really too, what I probably should have done was rotate it. I didn't want to overload you guys with too many things, but image rotation 90 degrees clockwise, and that would get it straight up in there. All right, so that's the process for getting your image, your scanned or your cleanup scan in there. All right, now when we go to Illustrator, all we're going to do is make a new document. I did use film and video because it's going to have a transparent background, and it's going to have that same frame size. All right, so if we set up in that way, now what we're going to do is do just like we did, I think on one of our posters, we're going to do File and Place, and I can grab the one that I had from that was cleaned up. I can click and drag to kind of define the size. I can rotate it right in here. All right, so now we're going to do what's called image tracing, because instead of like kind of do a physical tracing with colors, and then if we had to change things, we can have the software do it. So over here on your quick actions, we do image trace. Now this is the type of image that you're going to select. You got to kind of decide. So I think at this point we want, let's see what black and white logo looks like. All right, so not bad, but we got rid of some of our shading, right? So if I undo that, And this, we can go to one of these other ones, shades of gray. These are all presets. It's pretty much determining what the settings should be. But I'll show you how you can really get control of those settings also. Actually, that came out pretty good. But let's say that you didn't like that way that was happening. If we go to Window and then Image Trace, all right, now you can choose those settings and you can preview it, what it's going to look like, and then you can adjust some of the details. All right, so this threshold is a pretty good one for that. You can kind of get some of that stuff outlined, or we can go on to, like we were saying before, the grayscale. I think that's going to be a little better. Yeah, so you kind of get some of that shading. So once you're happy with the result, then you're going to go over here and you do expand. So that's going to convert, I believe, all of that tracing into pixels, or actually vectors. That's right. So there is a difference. Does anybody know the difference between a Photoshop file and an Illustrator file? Or if I say a raster image versus vector? All right, your Photoshop file, and we can see this really easily here as we started to do. If we look in really closely, right, we're actually seeing these pixels, right? Remember we talked about all that resolution, and for every square inch, you know, depending on the resolution, we see that many pixels. This is what we're talking about. And it kind of starts to break up at that point. Look at what happens though here in Illustrator. If I zoom in, it's all shapes, all right? And I can scale this to any degree that I want to. It might make a really big file size, but I could keep zooming in and I'm never going to lose quality. These edges are nice and sharp and straight, and I can scale this and make it as big as I want, and it's going to have that same type of quality to it. So this is called a vector image. All right, so in that process of image tracing, we have converted it from a raster to a vector image. So and that happens by expanding. Now I'm going to ungroup it. All right, I'm going to kind of deselect, and now I can go in here and I can get rid of that paper along the side. All right, all these different areas here, and I don't know, Aurora, what you kind of envisioned on this.
Oh, it wasn't done yet.
Okay, and that's fine too. All right, so I could either delete them, or I could change this to like a different color. All right, if you wanted to put a color behind there. All right, so all these areas kind of where there's a difference in color are going to then be selectable. Now it gets a little tricky in here because you have that shading, all right? And so with logos, you have to be careful with shading, all right? Because that does then kind of become kind of problematic when we're trying to recolor things, all right? But, you know, maybe I did something like this and I got rid of all the background in these types of areas. You know, there would be a lot of stuff to kind of change in there. And I'm not sure how this is going to work with our animation effect that we're going to do in After Effects, but at least we kind of we're getting this to be vectorized, and then, you know, it gives us the ability to recolor things. I think the other thing that we can do with this too, this might be going a little bit more into this than we need to be now, but there's what's called the live paint option. Let's see if I can get this to work correctly. I should be able to just click in here and choose a color to go in there. That'll be the last thing I do on this here. So I think it's maybe an additional option. No, where's my bucket tool? Live paint bucket, there's what I want. All right. If I pick a color, I think it has to be inside an enclosed area. All right, we'll come back to recoloring things if we need to. But that's the process of what I'd like you to do. So now we're going to have this. We would save it as our Illustrator file so that we could go back and edit it. And then for the purposes of uploading to our photos library, I would then, we'd have to save and export, or export. I think you'd either want a PNG or JPEG. Your PNG should retain the transparency. So if I do export and then come here and save it that way. All right, let's see what happens when I upload that to the photos folder. So I'll come back. I'll go away. Logos, scans, Illustrator logos. So then I would just kind of do like we did before, add, select from computer, and we have our PNG. All right, so you kind of see the transparency behind there. All right, but that would be a good start, and we'll see how our animation effects apply to that.